Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new unit impressions for Not Fallen Heroes. That's why you shouldn't always believe speculation, because it's not Fallen Heroes, and instead it's Kitsune and Wolfskins, aka Fate's Beasts. And I guess that kind of makes sense because we did just have Beasts in January, so they're going to try to fill out the Beast roster. And I can appreciate this because one of the most common questions I get is, what unit am I looking forward to? It just so happens to be Velouria's in this banner. So yeah, I'm kind of like, that's kind of exciting to me. And along with other potential prospects here that I'll go over through the video on why I think I'm a little bit more excited for Velouria than I should have been. TLDR, I'm not going to summon. Don't watch this video and think that I'm going to change my mind like any other video. All the rules still apply when it comes to my thoughts on these permanent banners, and that is you will get more value out of legendary banners or future skill banners where there's a reduced amount of units. And if you're truly looking for these heroes, it's always better, even fodder for instance, it's always better to summon later when you get more value out of your orbs on legendary banners when they share it with something else. Take Selkie, for instance, who's blue, could potentially share with Legendary Zora, Legendary Lucina, Fjorm, along with Legendary Tiki, for instance. So like that's already like clear cut. You know, patience will pay off. They might share with one of these legendary heroes or even a new mythic hero, and you get so much more value out of that instead. But regardless of that, what we're gonna do, if you're new to these unit impression videos, is we're gonna go over the units, what I think they might mean, both on their movement and unit types, weapon types, how they affect the current game, which is through top level gameplay, tier 21 arena, or tier 27 AR, 21 and above, obviously, tier 21 and above AR. So if you want to get my thoughts on that, that's what we're basically going through. I'll also talk about the skills, what skills they bring to the table, and how they could potentially be used with other units. All right, let's jump into it. Yay!
My tail is not wagging. It's not.
Okay, so first up is Keaton. As you can see over here, he is a red infantry beast. Now we know beasts don't get the benefit of 3 movements like Nyla showed before. In fact, Keaton is a wolf. Kind of makes sense when you compare it to Nyla, who is also a wolf. So what we can expect before I even look into the skills, he's going to have 2 movement. He's an infantry. He's red, so he's different from Nyla. However, red infantry is a very, especially melee, is a very saturated movement type and weapon type. He's going to do physical, so you can pretty much compare him to something like red swords. And unfortunately, that is some heavy, heavy, heavy competition when you think about all the invested red swords that are currently in the game, ranging from Legendary Ike being free, Mass Marth as well, covering dragons, having a really good stat spread, possibly also very merge if you've been playing for a while. So Keaton's movement and weapon type, unfortunately, doesn't really do him much favors. Also consider that beast slaying weapons could be a thing in the future, so he might end up having some weaknesses on top of already all of this. So unfortunately, Keaton doesn't look to be too in a good spot already just from the looks of it. So he's gonna have to do more than that to carry him through. Hopefully tomorrow when we look at the stat spread, there might be more I might see out of that. And of course he has that beast synergy, beast dragon synergy. So that could be useful. At least in team comps, you could really vary up what you have there, because someone like Mass Marth may not be too good of a companion for someone like, I don't know, Nyla, for instance, but Keaton would work better with Nyla. So you got to consider the team perspective as a whole. But beyond that, unfortunately, when it comes in a vacuum, how Keaton works, it's not going to be that impressive.
Got it?
Okay, so first thing I'll notice right away is 4 skills. 4 skills, not 5 skills. If you don't really understand what this means, it means that anyone that has 4 skills is a prime candidate for a demote. A demote is basically at the end of the banner. It means that the unit is a candidate, potential candidate for demotes. There hasn't been any precedent of a unit with 5 skills being demoted yet in the game, because it tends to be like they're really powerful. They bring something really special to the game. So Keaton is a potential demote. I will go over my thoughts of a demotion at the end of the video, but I want you to just keep that in mind for when we get through everything here, as to just keep that in mind, is maybe he's a potential demotion because of 4 skills. What he does bring to the table is Special Spiral, previously on Lewin. That's really desirable. So, of course, if he gets demoted, that's kind of amazing, but I don't know. Beast Valor, though. Beast Valor. Valor skills have also never been demoted before. So not only would Special Spiral and Beast Valor be kind of a crazy, pleasant surprise if that were to happen, these skills, I don't expect them to be demoted, nor do I really expect them to be more available. They're just really, like, Valor is not that special, but Special Spiral is really good. Now, the thing that does kind of shock me here is Keaton isn't really too good of a unit, and he's also a male. So males historically tend to get demoted. There are some females that have been demoted before. Of course, Sylvia, you have Nana, for instance. Those are some previous females that did get demoted before, but males tend to get demoted on these sort of banners, so there's some things here and there. Anyways, we'll go through the rest of my thoughts on summarizing them all at the end. Let's actually talk about Keaton and what his weapon means, because it is unique to him. It's preference. You're not going to be inheriting any of these. All beast weapons are literally non-inheritable, so what you see is what you get. So his weapon is pretty much, yeah, it's wall attacks, but basically it's just Sword Heart's weapon. It's literally just Sword Heart's weapon. He doubles on initiation, and when things double him, he also doubles back. So with Vantage, for instance, you're going to double a unit before it hits you. If he has good speed, which I'd be surprised if he did, but it's possible. I mean, I don't really know. He could end up doing some crazy quad shenanigans. It also means that he's really good as possibly a distant counter Vantage unit. If you were to combine it with that, unfortunately, he can't stack both Special Spiral and Vantage. If there was seals of these skills in the future, either Vantage or Special Spiral, he would become significantly better just without looking at his stat spread at all. But either way, he's looking to be some sort of infantry, Sword Heart, Ares kind of unit, just based on his weapon alone and what you could do with him. Of course, the last thing we want to look at is, of course, that his weapon does have the Woe Dao effect in it, which is plus 10 extra damage. And that is a little bit of a big difference between him and Sword Heart and Ares. However, Ares and Sword Heart, especially Ares, has a slaying effect on his weapon, and it has that Special Spiral already built in. So technically speaking, to really use someone like Keaton, you'd have to be using like Flashing Blade probably, or Heavy Blade, depending on what his stat spread is, and then doing like Moonbows or Glimmers with Vantage instead, and that's just not going to be as much damage as Ares, who's going to be using Brazen Attack Defense and Bonfires going off every single time. Like, it's just, I don't see Keaton doing that, unfortunately. So he's not really in a good place. Of course, he's in the same color as well. Kind of a disappointing look at him already. I don't expect much out of him. Remember, someone like Ares already has like 36 base attack. That model looks good. Big fan of that. Wolfskins look cool. Also remember, you will not be able to flower these guys up, these new units, up to plus 10. And that could be a little bit of a setback for somebody like Keaton. And of course, Velouria coming up in a moment.
Your smell. It's different than anybody else's.
Yay! Okay, cool. So, my favorite color, and this is probably not a surprise to anybody, is colorless. Wait, what do you mean your favorite color is not a color? Yeah, okay. Seriously though, colorless is my favorite unit type, movement type. Mine is Duma. Because they don't have weaknesses in the game. In a game that's based around rock, paper, scissors, a colorless unit has the best potential out of all of them because they lack weaknesses. And especially since Velouria is an infantry colorless melee type, which is very rare, it means her potential is already amazing compared to other units in the game because you can stat stack them, and every combat they have is based strictly on stats and not the weapon triangle. And that's huge. Now in the future, as I said, beast slaying weapons could completely affect this. I know poison daggers are a thing, and I know raven tomes are also a thing. However, none of those are currently meta impacting in any way. I don't really see them becoming that. Maybe Leon, the guy from FE8. Could potentially get a refine on Naglfar and become more meta, but I don't really see that for a while. And you know how the Robins got treated with Tactical Bolt. We don't really know if that's the case. So what I'm saying is colorless is great. Velouria has some potential, and as a stat stacked unit, this will really be nice for her because she doesn't have that many weaknesses. So I'm already really impressed with this. Okay, so again, 4 skills. And the skills themselves aren't really that interesting. Closed defense, ward beasts, Luna, okay? That's already kind of a big hint that she could also be a possible demotion. However, based on what I just said, Velouria is potentially a good unit, unlike somebody like Keaton, who, yeah, could probably be pretty strong, but he has tough competition. Velouria doesn't have that sort of competition. Colorless melee is pretty much like restricted to magical dragons right now. You have like Duma and Evrima. There isn't a colorless melee in the game, so she's in her own like league, and of course, she's a beast, so puts on the dragons really well. Like there's already some really good potential there. Now, on top of that, her weapon is also really good, unique to her and potentially super amazing. So she pretty much has Ouch Pouch for herself and whoever her ally support is. That's basically what this says. And of course, she gets that additional effect, which is the Wodao effect. So that's insane. That's insane. Really good. Already setting herself up for being like a really good mega tank, which I was already pushing for. So if you have somebody like, if you give her like distant counter, you give her like soul, and her ally support is maybe someone like, well, there's this guy coming up in a bit that's pretty good. But beyond him, let's just assume the most common one, male Corrin. You have yourself really set up for a unit that's really powerful. I'm assuming because she has speed 3 there, her stat spread's going to be like attack and speed favored. They tend to be like that. And maybe defense over res. But nonetheless, you can patch up res, especially with somebody like Air giving light blessings, pumping up that res, for instance. Summoner supports, ally supports. And yeah, you have yourself like soul, Ouch Pouch. I use this in my Bathcam and AR, like really, really dominant, for instance. So she can already have that built in. Plus there's a Wodao effect, which scales really well with that. Someone hits you and you're healing extra off soul, an additional 5 healing there just for free. She's going to probably have some good attack as well. Like this is already kind of mind blowing. And if a unit like this was to get demoted, I would be pretty surprised, but pretty happy as well. Cause it's just a really solid unit in all content of the game. Along with really low weaknesses. Not to mention the infantry units themselves. So Velouria herself and I believe Keaton right before were infantry. So they can also benefit from stuff like infantry pulse. So that means if you want to even support them even more, you could even run stuff like ether, being on like 1 charge, get even more damage out of it, securing kills even better. There's so much potential out of this, and these guys are pretty amazing. I don't expect much out of Keaton, but definitely Velouria is looking really amazing. Probably my favorite already from this banner.
Too much work.
I'm Kaden. As you can see, I'm from the most beautiful race in the world.
Okay. So what is this? Okay, like I get Beast being flying like Tibern and Naysala and I guess Rayson and Leanne, but what? Yeah, he's a horse now and he can't go through forests. So that's what cavalry means. It means it's gonna be 3 movement, and he's gonna have the same like weaknesses and strengths of a cavalry unit. So he's likely to have 3 movement. He's gonna have weaknesses to Zanbato, Wolf Tomes, Hello Ray, and of course, yeah. I mean, you can't go through forests, so that's kind of weird. I mean, I keep hearing foxes can't go through forests, but come on, horses can't go through forests either. Whatever. It's a game, okay? Green cavalry melee unit. Surprisingly, not a very saturated movement weapon type, to be honest. Melee cavalry green is actually not that common. It's like 4 or 5 units that I can count off the top of my head. Gunter, Frederick, Groom, Marth, Titania, and like, I'm talking about 3 or 4 star pool, of course. I don't even remember who the 5th one is. Like Walhart, I guess. So it's not a very saturated kind of movement weapon types. There's definitely potential for Kaden to be useful. Especially considering he's not really full of competition. So yeah, I mean, he definitely could do something.
The Kitsune.
Okay, so again, 4 skills, and Goad Beasts generally I would consider a bit better than Ward Beasts, especially if you play a more aggressive playstyle. However, Ward Beast is definitely still decent. Especially since Ward Flyers has definitely opened my eyes, especially on AR defense, if you've seen some of that gameplay on the Twitch stream before, or my AR defense. Of course, it's also in the Discord. It'll be there soon. But yeah, Speed Res Link, previously on Nina, not so impressive. I don't really consider that link too good. I mean, Titania already came with Attack Res Link, and that one's so good, especially if you combine it with somebody like Seth, who recently got Speed Tactic. And of course, you could give him like Defense Tactics CO, and he buffs all 4 stats. So I don't really consider Speed Res Link too good, and Goad Beast is like decent, but not necessarily too good either. What is interesting though is definitely his weapon. So Kitsune Fang, and probably the main reason why he likely wouldn't get demoted if he was to be one, kind of like how I was talking about Velouria having extremely good potential as a unit. Again, Kaden is really good because of what his weapon does. And I'm just going to kind of summarize this again. So rather than going through the whole wall of text and reading it for you, defense 3 implies he probably has a good defense spread. I think he's probably attack speed defense heavy with low res. That's my prediction. So maybe someone similar like Groom Marth. You guys can look forward to the comparison tomorrow on that one. That's my guess on that one. But what's more important is his weapon, basically based on the buffs he gets, he gives them to somebody else as spurs within 2 spaces. So the biggest comparison we have to this is like Erica's weapon and Legendary Marth's weapon. So basically the buffs that allies have around them, they take as spurs. But this is kind of the opposite effect. He's giving them to others. And this has some pretty decent potential, especially if you consider like tactics teams. He's already Cavalry, so it does help him a bit. If you consider Velouria previously, let's say you use tactics buffs and gave 6 to all stats to someone like Velouria through the tactics, 6 to all stats on Kaden here, and then Kaden was within 2 spaces and ally supported with Velouria. She basically gets 12 to all stats. The visible buffs plus Kaden's 6 from his weapon, 6 to all stats, and then if you take into account maybe some drives, like actually Goad, you could use like Goad Beast right there. You have an additional 4 attack, 4 speed, use like a drive defense, and you have yourself some crazy stat stacking potential. I want to definitely mention that if you use somebody like Erica or Legendary Marth, then he has some ridiculous amount of stat stacking there that's almost like triple dipping. So their weapons then work with the tactics buffs, visible buffs there. Kaden gets it too. He gives it to them, and then they take it from them. So you have like Erica and Legendary Marth going to like 300 BST or some crazy amount of stuff, and you create some really good teams that way. On top of that, these units can use Null C Disrupt, so pretty much invincible, I'd say. Yeah, there's some crazy potential you can do with that. However, even considering all of this, don't forget that there is a unit in the game that's in the 3 and 4 star pool that does rival this weapon. It's called Yato. Okay, it is technically 2 less to all stats because obviously if you give ally support to Kaden, he'll give 8 to all stats, the 6 he gets from the visible buffs, and of course Corrin gives 4 plus the 2. So the question you must ask yourself is Kaden really worth it? Does he really fit into a team comp? Are you already using male Corrin? You know, do you really need it? Like that's the real question here. He's a small boost over something you might likely already have, and the orbs spent for him may not necessarily be worth it. I think he's really good if you happen to get him, but if you're already using male Corrin, he probably isn't that much better. He's just going to be a little bit better. I want to mention, of course, that he can technically, this is kind of more difficult to set up. He can technically give 7 to all stats if you were to use Legendary Azura with Hone Attack 4 and Prayer Wheel onto him. But Legendary Azura can't really dance twice per turn, so you can't give that to the other unit, and you're going to have somebody else do like tactics buffs, like somebody giving 4 tactics buffs to hit Erica or Legendary Marth or whatever other unit. So there's a way to give 7 to all stats as well, but it's more difficult of a setup. That's all I'm going to say about this. Kaden is definitely very good at supporting, and he's probably not going to be too bad of a combat unit either because he doesn't really have that much competition. Either way, just because male Corrin is in the game though and is so available, I wouldn't really consider Kaden to be just like a must-have just because of Corrin existing, unfortunately. Check out that Cavalry unit.
Tell me I'm good. Scratch my ears. Snuggle time.
Okay. Oh, my ears. I wasn't scratching that voice. Okay. Anyways, okay. Blue Cavalry melee unit. Blue Cavalry melee unit. I prefer Velouria, by the way. Sorry. Blue Cavalry melee unit. Blue Cavalry melee. What does this mean? It means very competitive in terms of unit movement type. Unfortunately for Selkie, Selkie is competing with the likes of Perry, Oscar, Abel, Finn. No. Okay, you get the point. There is a lot of melee cavalry blue units compared to blue. So she's in already very competitive spot. Based on the skills we'll see in a moment, I'm going to assume she's actually high res attack and speed. That can be kind of assumed based on her skills, of course. And that means she's likely going to be compared tomorrow with someone like Perry, who's very similar to that. We'll go into that specifically tomorrow, but yeah, I'm saying this is a more competitive kind of area, so I don't really see Selkie being too good. We'll jump into that now. Okay, so one quick thing I didn't mention previously with Kaden's weapon, and this is kind of more important here with Selkie, because Kaden should be used as a support unit, but the thing is with Kaden and Selkie here is the additional effect they actually have on their preference weapons, which is they debuff the units that they get engaged with as long as they engage in combat. So attack and defense -4. I didn't mention that Kaden also has it, and they have a sturdy impact effect. Ugh. It's not the extra defense and attack, but it's almost similar enough anyways because you're lowering their defense by 4 and attack, so it's kind of like the same. But that is really oppressive as a weapon, and sturdy impact has definitely given me a lot of trouble. If you guys saw my Tiburon impressions, Tiburon is good because of sturdy impact and Hawk King Claw having amazing synergy. So to have that is really oppressive and really encourages the best way to counter this sort of thing is one-shotting the unit or running QR and outspeeding it, because then it becomes a speed check instead. Unfortunately, Selkie most likely will be pretty quick, so I don't really expect that to be too useful. Maybe it's time to bring out our boy Roy, who has QR built in his weapon, or maybe use Armads. I don't know. It's oppressive and likely the hardest thing that you have to deal with coming from Selkie and Kaden to a lesser extent. But let's actually talk about Selkie herself, because there's more to it than that. I'm going to go through the skills real quick. So she has 5 skills. Based on that alone, I really don't think she's going to get demoted. Yeah, it's a clear given that's not. Plus, she comes with a brand new, pretty cool skill. It's called Sabotage Attack. Basically, that is going to check res rather than HP. You're going to see why in a moment. Of units that are adjacent to each other, and if they have less res, then they get chill attack effect on all those units. So it's pretty much like a versus knight without the panic effect, and it's chill attack checking res. This is why I assume that her res is going to be good. That was also another part in her weapon, of course, so we'll look at it in a moment. But necessarily, that doesn't mean that she's, or the skill or her are going to be better than a Versa, because a Versa does have panic, and panic is really good. And of course, she may not have the highest res, or the unit you put this on may not have the highest res, so I don't feel like that's as consistent as like HP stacking on a Versa. My experience using a Versa has generally been very positive, so I don't think this skill would be better than using a Versa, but it's definitely a good substitute if you don't want to bring a Versa and you just want to give somebody else Sabotage Attack. They happen to be a high res unit. Take Air, for example, pretty solid choice, pretty high res. And you kind of need to use her anyways during light season, so like Sabotage Attack's pretty good there. I mean, Chill Attack is also an alternative, comes on Garnef. So it's an interesting skill, definitely pretty useful, not necessarily worth pulling for though. Let's talk more about what Selkie does. So her weapon gives her extra res, that's why I said, I think she's going to have Iceberg as well, checks res, so this is some good implications that she's going to have some pretty high res. Her weapon checks res between her and her opponent. It also looks at, when in combat of course, looks at whether the unit type she's attacking happens to be sword, lance, axe, dragonstone, or beast damage. So basically melee units. She's going to check whether melee units, if she has more res, and if she does, it's going to, and this is kind of nuts, it's going to literally take the difference in stats and give it as a bonus to her. So that's pretty crazy, especially since the bonus is up to 8. Like, yeah, she's going to outstack you if she's going to snowball effect. The weapon basically is like, if I'm stronger than you, I'm going to destroy you. That's literally what it does. So an enemy Selkie that's like highly merged up, or let's say buff from like Legendary Azura, is going to absolutely murder you. And that's kind of scary, of course, when you consider that her weapon also has the attack and defense debuffs and sturdy impact all built in one. AR season, when this unit ends up being bonus, is going to be quite a nightmare and will require you to bring out some really heavy counters, probably some green one-shots that completely one-shot her. Somebody like Surtur or Legendary Hector might actually be really good, because I suspect her defense will be pretty low. That's likely the saving grace. If she ends up attacking into you, at least we can be kind of confident that her defense likely won't be that good. If she has a weighted stat spread in attack, speed, and res, there's a good chance that she doesn't have as much in defense, so you might be able to just one-shot her depending on how this works out. So the stats will really determine the potential of how Selkie is, but it will be quite oppressive during the bonus seasons for sure. And beyond that, of course, she's a cavalry unit, could be kind of annoying because sturdy impact wasn't on cavalry before. Tiburn was really good because he was 3 movement. Honestly, Selkie's really good, but fortunately, we'll have some counters. I'm thankful this isn't like on a colorless unit, because then that would be just a nightmare to deal with in comparison. Pretty much summarizes what I think.
Hold still.
Iceberg added 20, so 40 res there probably. But who knows how much that differences there were in her weapon and such. So 22 extra damage, 44 res. Just to correct myself. Yes, there was Pane in the end there. That's likely to be our GHB unit. I'm only going to make a slight educated guess on this because I'm sure people will ask me. Based on foxes being cavalry, I'm going to assume that rabbits, which is what Pane is also a cavalry unit. But don't hold me to that. She could very well just be a infantry. There's no way to say. Okay, so here's our banner. It's 4-person. It's got 1 of each color, and it's likely going to last a decent time to overlap with other units. So as I say with most times, don't summon day 1 because you have time to make a good decision that involves looking at alternative banners, which involves the legendary banner at the end of this month. It's only like in a week. I'll be covering legendary banner predictions in another video soon, a few days. And of course, the Find and Vote banner, which of course has confirmed Halloween Myrrh, Legendary Lyn, Legendary Zora, and Duma. So yeah, that banner is coming up, And yeah, that means, you know, if you don't know, especially with the legendary banner what can coming up, like Hoshida and Xander, for instance, I could pretty much give you as an example of one unit I could pretty much see for sure coming up on that one. That's close counter. So, you know, maybe wait it out and give your options a chance, because this banner will last at least a couple of weeks. Forging Bonds will hopefully give us some tickets. So if you're going to use those, I want to kind of summarize how I feel about the end of this banner and what it can mean for demotions, because there's a little bit of like uncertainty here. I want to actually just TLDR say, I actually don't think there will be a demotion here. Now that's a bold estimate and I could be completely wrong. I think if they do a demotion, it will likely be a surprise. But they'll do it because they want to round out the roster and give people beast options. Pane, Nesala, Raisin, and a demote, just to give people a taste of like beasts and whatnot. Honestly, it could be any of the three. It could be Kaden, it could be Keaton, and Velouria. If I was to say, though, I'd probably say it's Keaton, but the fact that he holds Special Spiral is already kind of insane, and a Valor has never been demoted, so even that has some really big doubts. He's the kind of like the most, like the weakest kind of unit here, unfortunately, when it comes to potential. If they demoted someone like Velouria, I would be very pleasantly surprised, because Velouria is even better than, in my opinion, better than Selkie here. People will probably look at Selkie and say she's ridiculous, but I think Velouria in the hands of a player can create ridiculous possibilities. And that's, if Velouria got demoted, I would definitely invest in her in an Astra season, for instance, because I already have my light seasons covered, so I have to start preparing what I would need to do for an Astra season. I was already thinking someone like Winter Cecilia, but yeah, Velouria, for instance, would be an amazing addition there to the demotions, and that's something to consider. So that's also another reason why you probably shouldn't summon, because there's only one unit here that I can say for certain wouldn't get demoted, and that would be Selkie, and the other ones are quite uncertain. So if you get more value when the unit is demoted and you just pick them off summoning for other things. And of course the legendary banners in the future where they come back and you get, you know, legendary heroes or mythic heroes that way to share, that can also give you value. So yeah, you know, in the end, there's a lot of uncertainty here. These units are all cool in their own way. Keaton is probably the biggest disappointment, but at least he has some pretty good fodder in the end. Yeah, that pretty much summarizes what I think on this banner. Feel free to tell me below in the comments what you think, maybe who you're most looking forward to, maybe what you'll save for in the future. What do you think Pane will have in terms of fodder, or maybe what type of movement she is? Do you think another blue beast was really necessary, for instance? Do we really need that after Nesala? Who knows? I'll be covering unit comparisons tomorrow, just to give you a comparison of some units that are already in the 3 and 4 star pool that you can consider building, or alternatives to these to feel like you don't necessarily need them, because I can pretty much guarantee you don't need any of these units. The only really good unit here that really stands out is, of course, Velouria. So I'll cover her in detail tomorrow, and definitely be I'm hoping that she ends up being, you know, more than what's seen here. So yeah, give the video a like if you haven't already, sub to the channel if you haven't. I will see you guys with some more content, hopefully within this week. Legendary banner predictions, the comparison analysis video. I'm going to also upload an AR compilation, both offense, defense, give you guys some tips. I've had some demand for that as well. Maybe some highlights from Path of Radiance. I've had to play through that. So thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. All right. Peace.